Hello and welcome to Kathy's Corner. My name is Kathy Holt. I am a partner and trainer with Stewardship Resources, LLC. I am also an authorized teaching consultant with PowerChurch Plus software. Today, I have a very important question for you. Is your PowerChurch Plus software working for you? If all is running smoothly, that's awesome. On the other hand, let me ask you some questions. When it is time to prepare the monthly financial reports, are you frustrated before you even begin? Are you able to print financial reports with the information that the finance team needs to make wise financial decisions? Do you and does the finance team understand those reports? Are you thinking about all the extra time it takes you to do manual reports that you think that PowerChurch Plus should be doing for you? If you feel like I have just stepped into your world, it might be time for a review of your PowerChurch Plus setup. In this video, I will be going over a few did you know questions to give you an idea of what PowerChurch Plus can do for you with the proper setup. I could give you a much larger list, but for now, I will just be focusing on a few did you know items that are related to the chart of accounts setup and how they flow to financial reports. So depending on the chart of accounts setup, did you know that you can use separate accounting funds with their own unique chart of accounts in order to print separate income and expense statements? Now, I'm using the example of income and expense statements, but this would work for any financial report within PowerChurch. For example, you can print an income and expense statement for just the General O1 fund or your unrestricted income and how you spent that income. You can print a separate income and expense report for, say, your missions O2 fund for your missions income and how that income was spent. You can print a separate income and expense report for your designated fund, your designated income, and how that income was spent. Did you know that you can have checks and balances in place that will help you to make your entries correctly? So the checks and balances won't work unless you know what they are, and you need to follow them consistently. And of course, it's important to have a good set of checks and balances. Now, there are many checks and balances that can be put into place, but I'm going to give you a couple that have to do with the chart of accounts setup, just to give you an example. So the example I'm going to go over is knowing what the chart of account numbers mean. And then, once you know what they mean, you simply have to follow the pattern. So did you know that every chart of account number has 2 numbers, then 4 numbers, then 3 numbers? Now, the first 2 numbers is the fund number. And we already talked about how you can use separate accounting funds with their own unique chart of accounts in order to print separate income and expense statements for each fund. The separate funds are identified by the first 2 numbers of the chart of accounts. So the example here is the general fund is O1, and that's your unrestricted. Your missions fund is O2, and your designated fund is O4. Now, PowerChurch Plus comes with a default Fund O1 chart of accounts. If you would like to take advantage of setting up other funds, you have to set those up. Did you know that the middle 4 numbers is the body of these chart of account numbers? And it is very important to know what the first number of those middle 4 numbers mean. And many of my clients put the chart that is showing here on a sticky note on their computer. It helps them to make sure they choose the right chart of account number when they're putting their entries together. So if the middle four numbers start with a 1, it's always an asset. And for churches, that's generally their banking accounts, investment accounts, the value of their land and building, and if they're putting other large fixed assets on their balance sheet, they would begin with a 1 as well. If the middle four numbers begin with a 2, those are always liability account numbers. And for most churches, that's generally payroll liabilities and if they have a mortgage or another loan. If the middle four numbers start with a 3, it's always an equity account. Now, this is really, really important. 99% of the time, you are not going to code anything directly to an equity account. That's a chart of account number where the middle four numbers begin with a 3. And the reason is because every income account, every expense account, and if you are using transfer accounts, every transfer account, when you set up the chart of account number, you set it to automatically flow to the right equity account. That's why you don't code anything directly to an equity account. I'll show you a little more detail on that later. If the middle four numbers start with a 4, it's always an income account. If the middle four numbers start with a 5 through 8, it's always an expense account. If the middle four numbers start with a 9, it's a transfer account. Now that's another setup option within PowerChurch. You don't have to use it. You can or you cannot. But the thing to understand here, transfer accounts are not used to transfer money from one bank account to another bank account. Transfer accounts are used if one fund like 01, 02, 03 is going to give another fund money. It's easy to be really confused on transfer accounts. I don't have very many clients that actually use those. And I'm not going to go into further detail about those here. Okay, did you know that the last 3 numbers of each chart of account item is the sub number? Now the sub numbers, you use those to identify similar groups or projects, and you can print reports based on those sub numbers. So my example below here is we're talking about a designated fund for youth activities and trips, and we have subbed out the asset, which is the banking. We've subbed out the equity, we've subbed out the income, and we've subbed out the expense, and all 4 of those have the very same sub of 415. Okay, did you know that when you have this check and balance set up, that you are pretty much going to follow the pattern and you're going to match your funds and your subs? So in my example, I've got 2 examples here. So in the first example, we have subbed out the bank account, which is something you can do, but you don't have to do. And then we've got over here where we've set up the contribution fund for youth trip donations. And then in the accounting tab, the really important thing is that you match your funds, 0404. Now, since we have subbed out the bank in this example, you want to make sure you match your banking and your income, the subs match. Now, my second example, we haven't subbed out the bank for youth activities, which is fine. But over here, even though we're not matching the subs here, we have our banking, but we are matching the funds, 04 to 04. So you're going to follow that through any entry you make. You're going to have that check and balance for every single entry you make in PowerChurch. Did you know that you can easily track the balances of your designated and restricted funds? You do not have to use an Excel spreadsheet to track those balances. Now you do that by setting up every chart of account item that is either an income or an expense or transfer. If you're using those accounts, you tell each one of those accounts which equity that they're going to flow to. So the example here, I'm showing you a little piece of an account close to report, and this report shows you every equity that you have set up in your chart of accounts and what income or expense flows to that particular equity. So in this case, we've got youth activities income, youth activities expenses that automatically flow to the youth activities equity. Now down below here, I have a little snippet from the balance sheet, and it's the equity section. And right here's the youth activities trips, equity, and it's just showing you how that balance flows to the balance sheet. So that's how you keep track of your balances without having to use the Excel spreadsheet. Did you know that with the proper setup, you can print a changes in equity report? And this report is really sweet. It has the beginning equity balance. See, those are middle four numbers begin with a 3. So it has the beginning balance for the period you choose up here. So we're going to focus on youth activities and trips again. So you have a beginning balance plus the income minus the expenses equals the ending equity balance. So it's kind of puts the balance sheet and the income and expense report together in a summarized format. It's a really nice report. Did you know that with the proper setup, you can print an activity report showing all the activity in a specific designated fund for a specific period of time? So this is an activity report that was printed out for sub 415 to sub 415. So in this example, we did sub out the bank account. So we have an asset here, which is our bank account that is subbed out just for activities. We also have our activity or our equity, and it gives us a balance there. And notice that the balance of our equity matches the balance of our subbed out banking. So that's kind of a nice check and balance you can have set up. Now see where it says system generated? What system generated means is we set up the chart of account number for the income for youth activities to flow to the youth activities equity. We set up the expense for youth activities and trips to flow to the youth activities and trips equity. That's what system generated means. So if you take the total income for that period, less the total expenses for that period, that's where that 9681 happens. Now here's your income and here's your expenses. Now imagine printing this report and giving it to the one who's the head of the youth activities trip. They can easily see the money that's come in and the expenses so far, know what the balance is they have to work with. Did you know that you can assign a level to each chart of account item? Now your levels are those numbers to the left. And your chart of it, and that's going to determine your totals and subtotals. So for senior pastor, this level 5 to this level 5 on your income and expense report, you're going to get a subtotal that says subtotal senior pastor. From this level 3 to the next level 3 on your income and expense report, you're going to get a subtotal that says subtotal pastoral staff. Now you also, each chart of account item you set up as either a group, and notice we have groups here, and the groups you cannot post amounts to. They're headings on a report. Now the default for your chart of account names for groups are all caps. And then you're setting it up as a group or you're setting up as a detail. So the detail chart of account items are the ones that you post amounts to. Now we suggest that you do the details in upper and lowercase. We also suggest that the details belong to only one fund. Group accounts can belong to multiple funds, but we suggest that the detail accounts belong to only one fund. Did you know that you can print summarized financial reports by printing the report at a lower level? For example, here's an income and expense report that's printed at a level 6. So I want you to focus on the section for the pastoral salaries here. See how much detail there is here? Level 6 is the most detail. So now let's look at the same report printed at a level 4. So we went from this much went to this much detail from this much detail. So just by changing the level that you print a report at, depending on who's going to get this report, for example, congregations, when they get their reports, usually they like as few pages as possible. So they probably want a report printed at a lower level. When your finance team, they need all the details, so they need it printed at a higher level. Level 3 is as low as you can go, but usually that's too low to go. But you can play around with it and see what works for you. In the resource section, I have put an example of financial reports that's got a balance sheet, income and expense statement. It's got some other reports in there. So if you want to, you can take a look at that to see what you can have. Of course, it depends on your setup, but you can see an example of what you can have. Let me just go over some final thoughts with you. Um, the biggest one is every church is unique. There is no one chart of account setup that's going to work for every church. What you do is you determine what reports you need, and then you back into the chart of accounts. There are several options for setting up your PowerChurch file, but the goal is that it's going to print the reports that your finance team needs in order to make those wise financial decisions. Now, an existing chart of accounts can be changed, but careful planning is a must. You don't just go in and start making changes. My suggestion is always to start to plan the changes on an Excel spreadsheet first, to make sure it's like a house. You build a house or you make changes to a house. You just don't go buy boards and nails and start hammering and sawing. You start out with a blueprint. You start out with a plan. So that's what you need to do is start out with a plan for any changes you're going to be doing. Or if you're setting up a brand new chart of accounts, start out with a plan. Consider giving the gift of training to the bookkeeper and to the finance team. Church bookkeeping is very different than bookkeeping for your home or for regular for-profit big business. And one of the big reasons is it's not only there's the accounting piece that somebody has to learn, but there's also the fund accounting piece, and that's the part where you're tracking designated balances. Payroll as well is very different. We didn't go into that piece today, but I do have a link in the resource section to a video that I did on how payroll for church is different than regular business. Bookkeepers and finance team members have a heart to serve, a passion to serve. They agree to serve, and I see this all the time. They often find themselves in over their heads. So let me encourage you to give the gift of training, whether it be Stewardship Resources, LLC, or someone else in the accounting profession who knows accounting or nonprofit tax, accounting, and payroll laws in depth and can train your team on how to apply them to church accounting and payroll. And it's also helpful if whoever you use for your training, they also know how to set up and use PowerChurch Plus. Training is truly a gift. I cannot tell you how many times I've spoken with church bookkeepers or finance team members who are struggling with their positions because for the church bookkeepers, they did not understand how to use PowerChurch Plus properly. And many times they were doing their best to follow what the previous bookkeeper was doing, but they knew there were issues and they didn't know how to solve them. And fund accounting and church payroll can be quite a learning curve. For the finance team members, they were not getting the information they wanted to see in financial reports. And additionally, many of the finance teams I've worked with did not understand the difference between regular business payroll and church clergy payroll. And for them, that is very important because they're the ones that are setting up the payroll packages. So making sure that your finance team has financial reports to show the correct picture of the finances of your church is vitally important. And that will not happen unless you have a good setup with your accounting program. And we've been talking about PowerChurch Plus today, but that's true with any program. And the bookkeeper knows how to use it properly. The bookkeeper and the finance team have a good understanding of church and clergy payroll. Now, a copy of the screens that we just went over, as well as some other helpful resources, are in the information section of this video. I want to thank you for letting me share this information with you today. As always, if you have any questions or need help, please feel free to contact me at the phone number or email shown below. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, God bless you and have a fantastic day.